super excited to be talking to our next guest from Northern Dynasty Minerals. Ron Thiessen, the CEO, is with us from the Vancouver headquarters. Ron, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here, Jody.
I'm glad to be able to bend your ear here. A lot of conversation in the markets right now when it comes to copper, gold, silver, and other rare earth minerals. Tell us a little bit about Northern Dynasty Minerals and what you're up to.
So Northern Dynasty is the Pebble project in Alaska. It's the largest polymetallic project in the world. It contains, 107 million ounces of gold, 84 billion pounds of copper, 6 billion pounds of molybdenum. And it's in a relatively remote area located in Western Alaska, 50,000 square miles, where 7,500 people live. So it's kind of the size of the state of Nebraska with not a lot of people. There aren't any communities that are too nearby. 20 miles is the closest. We're located on state land. We acquired this project in 2002, and we spent about $1 billion on the project since that time. And the most recent efforts have been trying to take it through the permitting process in the United States. We were, I'm going to say, 75–80% successful. Came up with an extremely positive final environmental impact study. But during the last presidential election, there were some interferences that came to pass, and we didn't get the final permit at that time. And so we're going through what's called an administrative appeal process right now. There's been quite a bit of opposition to Pebble. The commercial fishing industry that's located about 125 to 150 miles away doesn't really understand metal mining, although all their boats are metal, all their hooks are metal. They use a lot of metal, and a lot of opposition from the NGOs in the Lower 48, who, again, use a lot of metal. Reality is the biggest asset at Pebble is the copper component. And with a desire to transition from fossil fuels to electricity, we need to produce a lot of electricity. And copper is the integral element that manufactures electricity. I mean, you don't find electricity naturally, you have to make it. You make it out of kinetic energy. So copper is the key element in making electricity, aggregating it, transporting it, managing it from DC down to AC, distributing it, and then using it at the final end, because you have to transition it back from electrons to kinetic energy. And just the EV cars that we plan to transition to, we need to produce 50% more copper by 2035 than we do today. And we're in a situation with worldwide copper production of declining production. So it's a huge undertaking to say that we're going to find 50% more copper. It's a very recyclable metal, but still there isn't nearly enough copper in usage to be recycled today to meet the upcoming demands.
Well, Ron, I've got a bunch of questions to unpack within that excellent explanation and sort of storyline that you've laid out for us here. There's a lot I want to sort of parse apart, if you don't mind. But before I get there, I want to let our listener, our viewer, know that the stock symbol for Northern Dynasty Minerals, not surprisingly, NDM, N as in Nancy, D as in David, M as in Mary on the Toronto Exchange, NDM. The first thing that comes to mind is how you drew the alignment to those who might push back on the excavation, the mining, the finds, and the gathering of these natural resources in order to do the things that we need to do, like fishing, like driving electric vehicles. Those resources need to come from somewhere, and the fact that you're going through such an arduous, it sounds, process in order to get the ability to do so with all of those numbers you were throwing around, how much is there to do that won't uproot entire communities to do so. But within that, Ron, something that really peaks with where we are in the global sense, so many of the resources needed to electrify have come from outside of North America, when in fact we have these deposits here. Can you speak a little bit to how we are beholden sometimes to not so democratic countries to feed what is so necessary in wanting to create a more electrified and non-fossil fuel run society?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, in terms of copper, we produce very little metal, actual copper metal in North America. Most of what we produce in North America are called copper concentrates. It's a mid processed product that gets shipped to Asian smelters for smelting and refining into final metal. So, I mean, currently the United States imports almost 50% of its metal for all of its uses. So it's self-reliant for about 50%, but that by 2030 will drop to 25% for the United States. I mean, Canada currently, you know, I'm going to say that 85–90% of our copper requirements are imported mainly from Asia. And it's only going to get much worse. China, for instance, controls 50% or 48% of the world's smelting and refining capacity. And they've gone around the world for the last 20 years tying up the supplies of copper concentrates from Africa, from Latin America, and places like that. And so we are actually beholden to them to try and obtain final metal. And it's a challenge. I mean, if you're an electric motor producer and you say to the Chinese, well, we would like to buy some copper wire to make the electric motors, it's more likely to say, well, I tell you what, we'll make the electric motors for you. So we're losing our manufacturing capacity, which is upstream development. I mean, in Canada, we don't have even a single copper specific smelter. We used to have 3 smelters in BC many years ago, but we don't anymore. We haven't built a copper smelter in North America since the 1960s. Now, there's a new technology that I think is the next leg in metal production. And I think that we in North America need to be focused on building out hydrometallurgical refineries, which are very different than smelters, closed systems, produce, you know, pure metal and don't have smokestacks and the negative things that go along with. So it's a technological advance that I think we can take advantage of. We just need to open up more mines. And like Pebble, you know, it's located in an area that's about 50,000 square miles. The entire site, and not that we would consume the entire site, but the entire valley that Pebble sits in, and the valley that we would put waste and tailings in, probably about 25 square miles compared to a 50,000 square mile development. Our actual footprint for the project itself is about 6 square miles. So
Ron, let's just talk about this and the elephant in the room often when it comes to mining and those looking to invest. I know there are many people who are shifting their investment portfolios to include ethical, responsible investments, frankly. And those are words that are difficult to tie in to minings. Like when you say tailings pond, that can be a trigger for some, particularly those in British Columbia that have memories of a failure of a tailings pond and the environmental impacts of such things. And so when you're even those words can be like, but there is no mining for copper, right? There's no mining for copper without tailings pond and responsible waste. And the smokestack piece is a real viable flag for so many, right?
I think we can eliminate that. I mean, the challenge with tailings is, you know, in a ton of copper, if it's a 1% copper deposit, there's 22 pounds of copper, which you'll recover about 20. The rest is waste, and the rest comes out as tailings. And tailings is probably a bad word for me to use because people don't like it, but it's an industry word. And tailings, I like to call, you know, sandbars in the Fraser River and places like that. Those are God's tailings. It's just simply crushed. Tailings are crushed rock, and it's very fine sand, and it's pumped out there with water. And the challenge for the industry and the
perception
you referred to is because some mines have allowed far too much water to accumulate in a tailing storage facility that's not designed to store water. And the simple solution is to get rid of excess water, which means the mine needs to build a water treatment plant to take all the nasties out of the water, if there are some,
Yeah.
and filter out the sand and discharge that excess water back into the environment in a manner that meets all the environmental standards. That's very doable today. For Pebble, we've designed 2 very large water treatment plants. The cost in the project is well over $500 million to treat all excess water, so that our tailings storage facility, they only fail when they get saturated and liquidated.
Right.
If there's
When they're mishandled.
Yes, if there's very little water in it,
Yeah.
it can't saturate and it can't liquefy. So
Right.
that's something that the industry has to move to address the concerns. And it's maybe at the end of the day, even people have to accept that maybe we should put those tailings back in the hole in the ground.
Right. What a
You know,
concept.
that's not such a bad idea.
Not such a bad idea.
And again, physically, it's very doable. Technologically, it's very doable, and it's simply a cost. But that's, you know, built into the price of the copper. Maybe it's built
Cost
into
of doing business. Yeah.
cost of doing business. You know, and that's what your reclamation bond is all about. Your reclamation funding is all about dealing with end of life. And, you know, so putting the tailings back in the ground actually is a job for another company, another group, people, for maybe another 10 years post the mine life.
Maybe the people that were working on the fossil fuel industry side of things, and all of a sudden are going to be needing a new and meaningful and viable
Yes.
long-term career move. This is part of the green economy, and it's interesting. And as somebody who very much considers herself environmentally aware and concerned, I drive a hybrid plug-in vehicle. I have copper in my car. I need that battery. I need the wire that plugs it in. I need the resources, right? So I can't
use far more copper in your car than the normal car. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I get it, Ron. And it's really something. I think that's one of the reasons why I like doing this job and helping to share the behind the dollar signs, behind the balance sheet, behind the company deck, because you know what you're talking about. This is not your first rodeo, I'm assuming. I'm just going to reiterate to our listener, Ron Thiessen is at the headquarters of Northern Dynasty Minerals, headquartered in Vancouver. And we're talking about Northern Dynasty's largest effort, which is the Pebble project in Alaska, and trying to figure out the long-term permitting efforts that are at play here. When it comes to behind the scenes of your company, how did you come to be? How did Northern Dynasty begin, and who's on your team? Tell us a little bit about the people behind the title.
So I've been in the industry since the mid 1980s. Joined a partnership of technical people. I'm a financial person. I like to refer to myself as SQUINT, which is simply an anachronism for a chartered accountant. But I joined the group in the early 1990s. We have geologists, engineers, and the like. The company's called Hunter Dickinson Inc. It's a private company, but pretty well known in the industry in Canada. And in 2002, we acquired the Pebble project from Teck Corporation. And Teck had discovered it in the late 1980s. But in 2002, copper prices were about 75 cents a pound, or 69 cents a pound even. And so they were looking to focus their efforts on zinc, not copper at the time. And so this project became available. We acquired it, and we took it on, spent a lot of money. We've had a couple of partners come and go on the project. Anglo was in for a while, invested $575 million. Rio invested $200 million, First Quantum. But these projects are all, they have a life of their own. Partners come and go. I mean, these large companies have multiple projects, and they have to make an evaluation, So First Quantum was very focused on Cobre de Panama in Panama, and felt that they, can't spend the time and the effort and the money focused on something the size and scale of Northern Dynasty when they've got something similar size and scale, capital-wise,
in Panama.
Panama.
Right.
And it was the same with Anglo, had projects in Peru that they wanted to pursue, and they knew it was going to take a long time in the permitting process in North America. So
it's fascinating to me. And before I let you go, because I mean, we're gonna have to do this again, because I probably have another 15 minutes worth of questions for you easily, right? Just based on what we've discussed. But also we've learned something about copper specifically during the last 2.5 years of COVID-19, right? Like
yes.
the fact that we're moving towards the technology that this virus that is still with us and likely going to continue to be with us for the all of eternity, like the flu and the colds and whatever. But copper basically is the surface, right? It's sanitized. Like our I keep doing this with my fingers if you're watching, because I'm like, every elevator button will either be touchless or copper.
Or door handles, or I mean, there's a big initiative here in Vancouver that Tech is underwriting to take the hospital's interiors and all the touchy parts, doorknobs, handles, and copper plate them or convert them into brass or something that's got copper. I mean, copper is antimicrobial, antibacterial, and antiviral. So I mean, it's got that application certainly. And
there's much more to consider here if you're looking for a place to put your investment dollars. Northern Dynasty Minerals, NDM, N as in Nancy, D as in David, M as in Mary on the Toronto Exchange. And Ron, if somebody's actually looking through, can I get the deck? Where are they going online? What's your web address?
So just come to www.northerndynasty.com. And
all right.
We also trade on the New York Exchange. We're NAK. And as I like to say, you're far too young to remember the song, but you got to get the knack.
Oh, I remember. I remember. I'm a grad of the 80s. I danced to that, and I probably would still dance today. Thank you for dancing with me today on First Glance with Jody Vance, Ron. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Talk again soon.
Okay.